Welcome, everyone, and thank you for listening, watching, however you're enjoying Sports Doc Talk. We are really happy that you are with us. This is our Super Bowl edition. Obviously, Dr. Garcia has a incredible background. We had to do this. We didn't plan on doing a show, but we're like, we've got to talk a little sports. We got to talk a little bit of injuries, a little fandom here. So, Dr. Garcia, our orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist, how are you?
I'm good. Excited for Super Bowl. Excited for, like you said, like the audience should hear. We've had way too many recordings in the last few weeks, and we're getting requests for guests, and unfortunately, our time is limited since this is not our primary job. But I am good now. I'm excited, and we just want to make sure we had this episode for our listeners because people are always interested in what's going on. They want to hear Will tease me about my lack of knowledge
No.
other than orthopedics and then also for the injury reports because I think that the injuries some people don't understand or the NFL purposely sort of construes the picture a little bit for people. So we'll go through that.
Hey, it's Super Bowl 59. It's a rematch from Super Bowl 57, where the Chiefs defeated the Eagles 38-35. If we get a matchup like that, then we're going to be in for a treat. Before we get started, I am wearing my Tiki Barber Giants jersey, and I want to explain because it was pure comedy this season for the Giants. I have my Wayne's World hat on because if you didn't laugh, you would cry. Just real quick, looking back at the season, what were some of the things that stood out for you that you remembered? And I know you're a fan of the Giants. Just I don't know, rambling along. It was a
I
long season
mean,
for a Giants fan.
if you're a Giants fan, there's not much to remember. Got a lot of fun stuff like watching players for other teams run rampant when they should have been on your team.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I think the Malik Neighbors is probably my favorite thing, just to see a player. I mean, imagine I keep talking about it. Basically, you have a player as good as him that put up the numbers that he did with four different quarterbacks, all subpar quarterbacks, pretty much. So the fact is, if he gets a good passer with a decent team, what can he possibly do? So, and even better wide receiving crew or whatever else happens. So I'm hopeful we're going to see continued improvement. And so that's what I have to look forward to. That's kind of the only highlight from the year. And Tyrod, I think, what's his name? Tyrod, he did really well as well. The running back,
Tracy.
Tracy did really well. I was pleased with him
Yeah.
too. Those were the kind of like two highlights. Minus your best players getting hurt like mid-season. So that's unfortunately it's a very short episode when you talk about what happened with the Giants.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting season. We're fans. Just looking back, I feel, for the fandom in Detroit, Dr. Bashai, right? Sharif, big Detroit Lions fan. So shout out to him. I know that he must have been agonizing over the loss that they suffered at the hands of Washington. For being a fan in the NFC East, I don't know what we're doing. We've got one of the top teams now. Back 2 out of 3 years, the Eagles are in the Super Bowl. Now you have this superstar quarterback with Washington. I don't know what to think of when it comes to the Giants. And looking around, heartache to all my friends back in New York that are Buffalo Bills fans. I don't know what to say anymore. I just go, sorry. There's nothing else to say. They have gone through so many different things, so many different expectations. Suffering another loss, is difficult. I guess the moral of the story is, you're concerned with everyone else. We suffer, but we don't want company in our misery as Giants fans. But we know a lot of people out there that suffered. And what it comes down to, at the end of this game, there'll be one fan base that's going to be happy, and everyone else will either say we had a terrible season, we had a good season, we had a great season, but we didn't win. And that's what's going to come down to. Fun fact, we'll do a little trivia before we kick off. New Orleans has the most Super Bowl appearances, tying them with Miami with 11. So have you been to New Orleans?
I've been there too many times for a little bit of fun and work events.
Okay, so real quick, what is your go-to either meal, snack, or to do when you go to New Orleans?
Well, like my travel, which we've talked about, and like my surgeries, I like unusual. So I like the gator sandwich. I
What?
really like it. I like gumbo. I love the gumbo.
Gumbos
There was
love
a
lovely.
place we went. There was a place we went there that had like all Southern cooking, and in Seattle, that's like really hard to find.
Yeah.
So I remember having amazing gumbo, but I always search out the gator sandwich. I love I don't want to like eat it all the time, but I want to try it. I want to say I did it. That's
All
what
right.
I have to do
I'm
without getting
sorry.
sick. You knew
Before we
you
move
what do you
on,
think I was
what
gonna
is the
say?
gator sandwich? What is it? Just describe it real quick. What's the gator sandwich besides the gator in it? What you get it on?
It's legitimately gator. No,
Yeah,
so it's gator, fried gator, like in a
there
po'
you go.
boy. So it's
Yeah,
a po' boy
love
gator.
po' boys. Yep.
But po' boys, I like the crawfish po' boys, and
Yep.
then obviously the beignets, right? If you like New Orleans, you love the beignets. I'm not a huge fan of the late night Bourbon Street,
Yep.
but I love the food there is so good. And like I could eat gumbo pretty much every day of the week. I love gumbo.
Love gumbo, love the pralines. Went there back in 2000 with a bunch of friends. We were hanging out, going for Mardi Gras, and our budget pretty much had us down to an alcohol budget and a praline budget, and that was it. And enough gas to drive back because we drove down in a huge van with a bunch of us from New York to New Orleans. That's all the story, and that's not for this crowd. So we're gonna move on. We've got some people that we're gonna show some love. Dr. Garcia, show some love to the recovery shop.
So big thanks to our sponsors, Recovery Shop. You've heard this before. It's the more fun episode. But again, for patients, I had a patient today ask about it. They're like, hey, like I love all the stuff you're doing, like a lot of this stuff, but what else can I do to get better? I want like the top of the line, especially from Seattle. They come in with a lot of research, and they want to know the best stuff. And so the nice thing with the Recovery Shop is I can put, normal level, top level, whatever you want. You get to kind of order. It's a nice menu of things for your post-op recovery, and ranging from nutrition, which we'll talk about more at some point in the near future, to machines that can bend faster, and new tech in terms of different ice machines, such as the nice machine we talked about. So it's an awesome option for surgeons to offer their patients, and it gives them that sort of next level stuff. And again, it's no obligation for the patients, but a lot of patients want this. They want more, and if you offer that to them, they want it. So it's a great thing. So again, reach out to Mike. They've been an awesome resource, and the patients absolutely love it. So
Yeah, just we can't say enough good things, and you summed it up perfectly. Dr. Garcia, there's been a lot of Super Bowls. We've seen a lot of Super Bowls. Do you have a memorable injury or occurrence that has happened in the past that really stands out for you, whether a player going into the Super Bowl with an injury or sustaining one in the big game that you can recall there?
well, I mean, the one I keep seeing about, I hate to say it's from like a malpractice reason in the sense that like seeing it, but Terrell Owens, when
Yeah,
he waived the doctors, I think I don't know if we're going to talk about it, but the fibular, he had a fracture of his ankle,
yeah,
and he was basically not allowed to play on it, and he had to write a consent that he wasn't going to sue the surgeons to release him to play in the game, and then he ended up having a phenomenal game. Only freak athletes, as we keep saying, there are regular athletes like
yep,
I'm not even maybe a regular athlete, but a regular athlete, and then there's guys like that, right? That like
yep.
even when they're 70%, they're better than most people already. And so the fact that he's able to do that is just mind-boggling. I don't remember any serious injuries, but again, I'm not the great person for watching everything at full speed completely. But that one really rang a bell to me because that's just insane.
Yeah, and it's a perfect segue to this game, right? Because he's with the Philadelphia Eagles. There was he questioned Donovan McNabb's toughness, right? We're going into the little bit more of the sports talk right now than the doctor talk. When he played in that game, 122 yards, 9 catches, was absolutely phenomenal. But can you just describe what that pain threshold or what kind of setback when you're talking about that fracture and the
Oh
sprained
my god.
ankle, and you're going into this game and you're playing football, let alone running around two-hand touch, but then getting tackled, and they tackle you low, and God knows there's a little tweaking and twisting here and there. Just from a pain threshold, from either something that or just what your patients go through, what are we can we put any thoughts on what's happening there to be in a position for you to play an entire game in those conditions?
So I take care of a lot of people. I do lots of surgeries and post-operative pain. There's different levels, and everyone's got different thresholds. There's some people that They say they have high pain tolerance. They really don't. People that have a high pain tolerance, and they do. And then there's this level. So when you look at the body, there's different nerve receptors. The most insensitive ones are in the bone. And that's when you break a bone, that's why people are like screaming, right? Because they're like, you've seen them in the movies, you see them in the ER. Like the broken bone's like one of the worst, right? Like there's kidney stones, those are really bad. There's other things that are bad, but a broken bone really hurts. And not to mention a broken bone when you don't move hurts. So imagine what a broken bone feels like as you were walking on it. So it's like, this is like a level 10 out of 10 that you're playing on this thing. And he's running on it and getting hit. So there's no pain describable. Again, I think women take the cake in terms of being able to handle pain with having pregnancies and everything.
Yeah, of course.
And most men couldn't make it very far, we all know. But nonetheless, I would say that running on a broken ankle is right up there with one of the most kind of toughest things I've ever heard of. So it's pretty impressive.
Okay, let's get to the game. Let's start on the line, right? Because if this game is going to be determined, it's going to be determined by the line play. We kind of know the recipe for Philadelphia this year has been we are going to run the ball. And kudos to them because a lot of teams kind of get away from their bread and butter. You know what makes them really good. They're not afraid of that, right? This is what they do. And for them on their offensive line, their big offensive tackle is Lane Johnson, and he suffered an abdominal injury, and he's been dealing with that injury for a while now. What are we talking about when it says abdominal injury? Because it seems a little vague. So maybe you could explain that a little bit better. Because we go back to the way you started this show, we kind of get some information, but we don't get the whole story.
Yeah. So these abdominal injuries, they're usually oblique injuries. They're hard to treat. There are people that do fix them, but they're not that common. And generally, they just nag, right? Like so, imagine you have an external. You have different oblique muscles layers in there, and they pull it off, and there's like a little hole in the muscle, and it hurts every time you're twisting or moving. It can feel it pulling. It's kind of like a hernia but higher up, and they're really uncomfortable. It's like a groin pull, right? We've seen like LeBron James, we talked about, it took him forever to get back from a groin pull. As a swimmer, I had a couple of groin pulls. They're not fun. It's essentially like that. It's a little tear of the muscle and you want it to heal, or the muscle tendon and you want it to heal back. It's like a partial hamstring tear. Those just nag, and it's in the abdominal area. So that's what he had, likely. Obviously, they're not going to tell you exactly what he had because basically if he can play, they don't really have to report it fully. The issue is when they get surgeries and they have to tell you. But again, it's also this like weird HIPAA versus NFL rules. And, they don't want the teams to know, right? Like if it's something that you think that's going to really limit him, you don't want the teams to know that he's that limited because then they're going to go after him for the play. Obviously, if he's limited enough that it's still safe for him to play, there is a strategy here. I mean, some of the coaches are known for really dumbing down these injuries, and there's probably borderline to like, are they even following the rules?
Yeah. That's something that after the season you're kind of looking at. Is there anything is that just time and recovery, or is that something that eventually you may go in there and tweak it, or it depends on what the medical records say based on that injury?
I mean, this is one of those ones that I think that rest alone should help. I mean, abdominal surgery is not that common. People do sports hernias and things like that, which this is something similar. But in general, that's probably not what they're going to do for this if he's been able to deal with it so much. So he probably will just sort of rest it off. And the good news is he'll have some downtime after this. But, these guys are tough. Like they play through a lot more than we would normally play for. And now the Super Bowl's here, right? Like the team's about as a losing season, they got like nothing to play for. That's a different animal. This is like the final game. And like every one of these players counts that we're going to talk about.
Yep. And then on the other side of the ball, someone that's relying on the pass rush, one of the great defensive tackles in the game, Chris Jones. Don't get it confused with his brother, which is the UFC heavyweight champion. But that's a whole other. I digress. See, I go down these loopholes. He has a calf strain. So when you have a calf strain, they're saying they've been sitting him out from practice. So, and this has been kind of lingering. So I wonder what the degree of this calf strain is for you as a big man to run up against somebody else that's big, push off of them, excel, throw them off, run after quarterback, run after running back on every single play. What are your limitations, or what are some of the concerns as a doctor that you're treating and maybe rehabbing as you get ready for this big game?
I mean, the power, obviously, right? There's power in this calf muscle. We've seen it before with other injuries, right? These calf muscles these don't usually end up in surgery, except that they tear their Achilles lower down. So, you heard about calf problem and then they tear their Achilles later. So that is a risk in this situation, but probably not that common. These we call them gastric tears. They just are such a nuisance. And, he's probably booting, he's probably treating, he's getting maybe PRP, he's getting tons of other different all the little voodoo things they could possibly do to give him to make him better.
Is he in a
and
boot?
they're probably just trying.
Do you think you put him in a boot?
Be.
Yeah, put him in a boot when he's not practicing or something like that. What is the boot?
Yeah, but the issue is they get stiff. If you get the problem you have is like you want to keep it loose, right? Like you want it to you want it to heal, but if you get him too stiff and he goes back and fires, right, that'll rip it through again. So it's one of those ones that's just a pain in the butt to deal with. I mean, these are some of the worst injuries. I mean, I've had patients take 6-7 weeks, more than that, to recover from one of these. So these are really nagging, which is why they're keeping him out of practice, right? Like if he's that good, he doesn't need to practice. They give him treatment, and then hopefully he can make it through the game.
Yeah. Does he need the Reblis? I'm over here doing the recovery shop here now. Does he get on the Reblis, or he doesn't have to worry about?
I think he's getting I think he's getting above the Reblis right now. I think he's getting more treatment than you would ever imagine.
The full-time treatment. All right, as we get ready to move on to some other injuries, when it comes to the Super Bowl, whether it's you, the household, the wife, the kids, what are some of the things that you look forward to when you're actually sitting down and watching the game? Anthems, commercials, blah, 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 blah. What are some of those thoughts when it comes down to it?
Well, first off, Mike, I'll tell you right now, my wife has zero interest in the Super Bowl. So so right there, that's already she just wants to see the commercials.
Okay. So she's there. She's there watching.
No. She always is there. She will be there. She has zero interest, and that's the type of wife she is. She just shows up for the Super Bowl.
Okay.
So she'll show up for the Super Bowl, but she has no interest in who wins, even if it's the Giants. She doesn't care. So that's the thing. The kids, they just think it's fun to hang out with dad and watch the game.
Gotcha.
And they like the football. They used to watch, I have little pictures when they were babies, and they were on my lap watching the Giants. That was before that the Giants would make the kids cry. Now that's a different story. But to be honest with you, they really like the Super Bowl because they know it's like that. There's we're just hanging out, we're having a good time. They love the commercials, but they don't get them. Like these Doritos, some of these commercials are so my kids are still young, so for them they're not funny. I love the commercials. I like the food. I like to hang out. I just like the experience, right? Like the whole thing. And usually it's actually kind of nice when I don't root for the team, because then I don't have to really focus on the game. When I watch the Giants, I'm fully focused.
Yeah.
So it's it makes it more of a social aspect. But I think the social aspect of it is good for the whole family. So that's what we really like about it.
Yeah. Wow. My wife, right there, loves commercials. She'll watch. She watched a little bit more football this year. It's almost one of those things where the games will be on and we're doing other things, but we'll have the games on the background, stop once in a while, watch the game, depending, right? Because as you know, family, you have other commitments, especially on the Sunday, you're doing all these different things, right? Thursdays, depends. But for her, she loves commercials. I like some of them. I critique more. Going, you spent all this money for this commercial. So that's where my critique is. I become one of those people, right? I think about the money you spent for this platform that you're doing. For me, I'm really looking forward to the anthem this year with John Baptiste. He's one of my favorite artists. I think he's a musical, creative, artistic genius. I think he's absolutely incredible. So I want to see what he's going to do with it. If for fans out there on Netflix, American Symphony kind of follows his year where he won for the Grammys. He performed in radio and where am I thinking? Carnegie Hall. His wife went through cancer. It's absolutely amazing. But he's one of these geniuses. So I'm looking forward to a lot of it there. Let's talk about some other key injuries. Speaking with music. I don't want to get any of the Swifties concerned.
No. Be careful with this one.
We can easily get canceled, so let's just be careful. But let's talk about Travis Kelsey, the All-Pro future Hall of Famer tight end. dealing with this hyperextended knee and bone bruise. He suffered it during the practice, and it said resulted in significant swelling. They're saying there's no structural damage. Does all of that make sense? Does some of it go, wait, you can't have one without the other? What are some of your thoughts when you hear about this?
So this is a good one. I see this frequently with skiing. So they like land and they'll tweak their knee up, or like, they'll fall and they'll go hyperextension. And some people's knees go hyper more than others. He's a pretty big dude, so I highly doubt he's hyper lax.
Yeah.
But he's one of those ones. That's one of those ones where when you've seen the players, they get hit and then their knee goes backwards.
Yep.
And everyone gets disgusted.
Yep.
That's like pre this. So this is like one step before that. So thankfully nothing else happened. Because the back of the knee, the structures in the back of the knee are really stiff. There's a capsule and everything else. So when he hyperextended it, he went like this, and the bones actually in the front click together, which is pretty uncommon. But you can get that, and you get a bone bruise in the front, and this can be just like this. The problem is you basically sprain the back of the knee. He may have sprained, hamstrings and kind of tweaked them a little bit. So that's why it was swelled up a lot. My assumption is that hopefully he didn't do any significant damage, and I don't think he did, or they would have done anything. They're saying no structural damage. So this is one of those ones he'll probably get back. He'll probably be a little bit sore, but I don't think the risk long term is much for this one.
So the knee is not only affecting the knee with that hyperextension, but is affecting the hamstring because it's putting pressure or strength.
Yeah. Well, the hamstrings, there's a knee joint like this, and the hamstrings come past the knee joint. Yeah. So those hamstrings and the calf muscles, they go on either side. They protect the knee from going into hyperextension. They're firing so that they lock up so he doesn't go farther.
So when it happens, he's putting a strain on that, so he can actually feel that. And any risk of possibly a hamstring pull or something like that? Is there any kind of damage, or not damage, but a strain toward that hamstring since it was affected by it, or that's not something you really think about?
Pretty low risk. The hamstring that people usually strain are the hamstring where it attaches in the butt up higher. The lower hamstring, which attaches, is much less commonly torn because there's mostly tendons down there.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a less likely issue, but he could have inflammation, right? Like the calf muscle higher up is the one that the same thing we just talked about, the calf strain. The calf muscle lower down is the Achilles. So either it pops or it doesn't usually strain. It's hard to strain a tendon. So as a result, it's a lot less likely that he has a sort of long-term ramifications from this.
All right. If this Eagles offense is going to click, we know a big part of it is Saquon Barkley. But what has made his season so successful not only is the line play, but the threat of Jalen Hurts running as well, right? So Jalen hurt his left knee against the Rams. He's been wearing a brace. He's been playing through it. We've seen him play, so he's been playing through it. What are some of the concerns and restrictions with that left knee? And I guess we're going on 3 weeks or close to a month now. Do you have less concern about that injury and feel like he's going to be, closer to his normal self? Or is it something like, depending on the severity, this could linger a little bit longer, and all you need is to maybe not take the right hit, but turn the wrong way on a hit for you to kind of reactivate that?
Yeah. So again, obviously, this is the classic NFL thing. He hurt his left knee, right? Like I looked it up. There's just no way to figure out what's going on. Yeah, it's been pretty sort of locked down. Generally, a hurt knee is like a little meniscus tear, but I highly doubt that because I don't think he would have enough to get by if he had torn his meniscus. Could it be a little cartilage defect? Maybe, but we all talk about this. It's probably MCL, right? He probably sprained his MCL a little bit, like DK Metcalf did, and he's probably just has this lingering sort of knee sprain thing that he's wearing that brace for. Because you don't wear a brace if you have just a little bit of like inflammation in the knee, because there's no support there, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably some sort of ligament sprain. He can play through it. I mean, the concern is obviously if he keeps going with it, can he tear it more? Tearing the MCL more is not going to keep him out of the game unless he actually does like a big one afterwards. It could tear something else. I think the odds of him, considering he's had this for so long and he's been able to play those last couple of games, I mean, everyone's trying to hit him there, right? Like it's not like it's new for the Super Bowl that he's going to get attacked in this area. And he's had 2 extra weeks of rest. So I don't think it's going to affect him too much. But again, it's always that thing about the athlete, like the big game, his knee's not perfect. Does it slow him down? Does it tick, right? Like, does he run or pass? Does he run or pass? Is that going to slow him down from the run? He's just going to think about it for an extra second before he goes, right? Or is he going all out? When you're injured, I don't care who you are, there is definitely this split second thought.
Yeah, but at the same time, we know these guys are built differently. They think differently. They're wired differently. And the fact that he already lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs, I'm thinking that he's going to be like, okay, I got to go for it. He's a tough guy. He's mentally tough. Coming from the programs that he did in college and transferring and is still staying the course. So we know mentally he's tough. So I would be surprised. Staying with Jalen Hurts, I just wanted to read a little note. The last time a quarterback played in the Super Bowl with 18 or fewer passing touchdowns in the regular season was Trent Dilfer with the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going back to more shame for the Giants, because that's the game that the Ravens kicked the snot out of the Giants in that Super Bowl. Dilfer had 12 touchdown passes that season. Hurts has 18 passing touchdowns, 28 total, because he has the 10 rushing. So that would be an interesting stat if the Eagles win with Jalen Hurts. So it's just one of those things. I was just curious. I wanted to kind of look it up. We'll wrap up 2 other key injuries for Kansas City. Jalen Watson. He's missed the last 11 games with a broken leg, but returned for the playoffs. What are some of your thoughts about that? And just kind of describe that injury and maybe what you're looking for if you're in that room with the medical team when it comes to him.
I mean, the good news about the broken leg is we've seen this before. Some of these basketball players, there was one while ago that broke his leg in half and had to go straight to the emergency room. They put a nail on it. So generally he gets a nail down it, which is kind of crazy sounding, but he's got a piece of metal inside of there. That stabilizes him so he can start walking on it. But the good news is generally if you do it right, you can avoid damage to the inside of the knee, right? Like broken bones, so imagine you have your bone, you have your joints. Like you have your knee, you have your ankle, and then you got the long bone in the middle. You break the long bone in the middle and it heals, the ramifications are not that bad. The issue is when you start damaging the joints, because the joints are what have the cartilage and you don't want injuries to that. So ramifications for him, he's probably going to be playing pretty well. And now he's got sort of the bionic leg. So he's going to have a metal rod in between there that protects him. I mean, occasionally they can break through the rod, but it's not that common. But if I was going to get an injury that was bad, I knew it was going to heal, this is the one to get, because it's less likely to have damage otherwise. I mean, it's morbid, but as long as you don't damage your joint, I would never want damage to my joint. The joint's the key, right? That's where the pain comes from. He heals his bone nicely. He's got the rod in there. He may get to take that out at some point, but it's a thing I see, every so often, people with trauma, like ski injuries, and they're able to get back to everything they want to do. So again, a well done surgery will do very well with these.
Yeah. Key injury for the Eagles, Landon Dickerson. He suffered a left knee injury. I don't know what that means. Maybe you could explain it. Suffered left knee injury, just so generic. An NFC championship game. He was playing center at the time. What does that mean? And is this something that or we don't know what it means, because it's just
this is like, if he's a lineman, it's probably an MCL again. You tear your posterior cornea, you tear your ACL, you tear your PCL, generally you're out for a bit. He's going to probably, all the linemen wear braces. It's a fun fact. It's one of 2 things so the data has demonstrated braces help for only 2 things: skiing injuries after ACL tears and NFL linemen and MCL tears. So if you see all those linemen wearing those braces, because it protects them from having the MCL tears. And so this is maybe what he got. Usually, these are so vague and they don't want anybody to know. But that's probably what he has again. And the nice thing about those is that generally they can play through them, doesn't need surgery. But again, we brought this up before the episode started. What you guys may see is all of a sudden, when this whole thing's done, they're going to be like, Dr. Garcia and Will, they have no idea what they're talking about. Every one of those guys got surgery at the end of the season. But you'll know. I mean, that first week is, when I was looking with the Seahawks and stuff, at the end of that week after the season's over is like surgery mania for the sports players, right? They all come in and they get cleaned up, they get fixed up, and basically then you cleaned house and then you focus on getting back to the next season.
It's fascinating, and I love how everything can be just very general, right? Just like, oh, he's got a little bruise, he's got a boo-boo here, he's got a boo-boo there, he'll be all right, this hurts, that hurt. Like, what do you mean? What happened? Right? If it was one of our kids, but like, no, What happened? Just something happened. Before we wrap it up, key player for the Eagles not playing. One of the captains, and we'll see if he's going to retire or not, right? Because he had a great season, but we're not sure what's going to happen. Brandon Graham tears his tricep. I don't know, maybe about 6 weeks ago. What kind of injury is that? And we're just talking about injuries. We know he's not going to play, but that type of sustained injury for the tricep, he mentioned at his locker room, he was, really feeling emotional about it. And he was like, I knew what that was. So what happens there when you tear your tricep? What's going on with that?
Well, first off, that's a pretty uncommon injury, but we had the one player for the Giants that tore it twice. And it was a few years ago, one of the, I think it was one of our tight ends or somebody, so or fullback maybe, but he basically tore his tricep off the bone, and that's the muscle that extends your elbow. That's what gives you that sort of contour in the back.
Yeah.
And when you tear that, it's pretty much surgery every time. I mean, unless you really have a lot of, you're very frail, etc. And it's a decent recovery though. And the problem you have, it's like tearing your pec or tearing your biceps tendon. These are power muscles. So this is a long recovery. And again, there is a chance that you can get back from that. We've seen it before. It's just that, and again, upper extremity stuff like arms and stuff are much better to get back than lower extremity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not running on them like a patella tendon rupture we talked about. That's kind of a nightmare. But a triceps rupture, there's a chance he'll get back, but this could be the icing on the cake, right? But this is a long recovery, and we're talking about 6 months, 9 months to recovery. And again, is he ever the same? Does he have the same power? We have to repair these really well with all these fancy things. But nonetheless, it might not be the same. But these big muscle ruptures are a big deal.
All right, what should we do now? Let's wrap it up. Before we wrap it up, let's do a little trivia time. I'm gonna try to make it all kind of go along the rounds of what we suffered through this year with losing Saquon and just seeing him just be the great player that we always thought he could be with the right situation. And the Eagles, the way they protect, the way they open up holes, just was the perfect storm for the year that Saquon had. Do you know who has, and I could take the player's name, I could take the Super Bowl, which is impossible. I would never guess the Super Bowl, or at least a team. What player had the most rushing yards in a Super Bowl game? Can you think of the team, the player? And I think if the Chiefs are going to have, if the Eagles are going to have a chance at winning the Super Bowl, Saquon may come close to achieving this record.
Terrell Davis, was it? Or is it, let me see.
Terrell Davis is not it, but he had the record at one point.
Ooh, that counts. Listen, if I even got that close, that's pretty good. I'll take it.
He had the record. It was Timmy Smith, the Washington Redskins at the time. They beat the Denver Broncos. This is when the Denver Broncos were on that Buffalo Bills losing streak, losing to Washington, losing to the Giants. Before they got Terrell Davis. Terrell Davis is on the list, but he is not number one. In fact, Terrell Davis was it depends, right? They have it by appearances because the most yards ever is Franco Harris, but that's over 4 appearances. And I'm starting to get into the woods where nobody's going to care at this point. So I'll just leave it as this. Hey, let's get predictions. Who's winning the game?
Well, I can tell you what I want. I want a tie, so neither one of them wins.
That doesn't work. You cannot ask for a tie.
I don't know, man. The Eagles are just, I know the Chiefs have been lucky and they've got a lot of things in their back pocket, like referees, et cetera, or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know. The Eagles look so good. They're pretty untouchable. And unfortunately they haven't, for me, I don't want to ever root for them, but they haven't had a running back like Saquon. And it's just going to be hard to beat them because when teams struggle, they go to their ground game. And that's like their best game right now. So it's just going to be really difficult. I don't know how they're going to be stopped. I don't think anybody's minus the chaos they had early on. It was not that much, but they've been untouchable. So
Yeah,
I mean, they made the Commanders look like a joke, and they were amazing. I mean, no one could stop Jaden Daniels, and they just
yep, their defense is good. Their rush is good. If they stick to the plan and they don't get cute and they run the ball, the Chiefs' rushing defense have not been good. The only thing that the Chiefs has been really good at in defense is points allowed. They let you run up and down all over the field, and then they get to that to that zone, the red zone or whatever you want to call it, and they've done a good job of stopping teams from scoring. I think they were ranked number 2 this season in scoring defense. The problem is the Eagles had the number 1 defense with points allowed, and one of the top rushing games in the
I mean, I
NFL.
don't know. It's a 1-2 combo that's a problem, right? You can stop one, but you can't stop both.
Yeah, and the fact that the Chiefs lost Rashid Rice, which I thought was a big loss for the season, really hurt. I know they have some other players to step in, but he was different, different looking player, different speed, different weapon. That said, I'm rooting for the Chiefs. All right. I
You
can't
have
root
to.
for the
You have
Eagles.
to.
I can't. I know everybody else would be like they have Chiefs fatigue. And I saw a map. It was like Kansas City root for the Chiefs, Philadelphia root for the Eagles, and then it had the rest of the country. It was like no one cares, right? They care about the game, but they can't root for either team. I can't stand Nick Sirianni. He's one of those guys. But like I said, I'm biased. I am a Giants fan. I feel a certain way. I feel a certain way about the Eagles, the Cowboys. Obviously I'm gonna feel a certain way about Washington, especially the way their future looks. So I'm okay. I'm happy saying I'm just grumpy and I want misery. It's my part of my fandom, right? I'm completely fine with that. So go Chiefs. But my brain says if the Eagles put it together the way they've been doing all year and just stay the course, they don't really have to do anything extra. Just stay the course. They're going to have a great chance of winning this game. Anyway, let's wrap it up. Let's thank everybody. Please check us out, sportsdoctalk.com. We've got episodes, we've got shows, we've got transcripts. If you don't want to listen to us, read about us. It's probably way better than listening to me jibber jab all over the place. So grab a transcript, check it out. If reading is your thing, we love your emails. We love ideas about future shows. We've had people reach out to us to be guests on the show. So keep it up, sportsdoctalk.com. Dr. Garcia, any last words as we wrap it up?
Yeah, lots of fun stuff coming. We got a bunch of guests already that we're going to be lined up. We're really excited. I think our issue now is just finding time to get all the guests on. But we want to make sure we get back to some of those other shows too. People like some of the cutting edge stuff that we talked about. So they'll try to be sprinkled in here between these. And any injuries you want us to talk about, let us know. We're open to any topics. Obviously, this show pivots. You never know what the next show is going to be about.
That is true. We hope everyone enjoys this Super Bowl Sunday and they have a great time. Please be responsible. Had too many drinks. We got Uber. We got Lyft. We want everyone to be safe and happy, even if you're miserable because the team that you rooted for didn't win. It's okay. We want to make sure that you're around so you can root for your team next season. Thank you, everyone. Will Sanchez, Dr. Garcia. We're out. Enjoy the game.